In this video we shall look at a sample of requirements. Once again, we shall begin with a little disclaimer that it's almost impossible to find real requirements in an open world, because no customer ever wants to publish any requirements for his project in public. So, these requirements are specifically created for an educational purpose, and these are requirements for some specific imaginary project like file converter. And here we shall review sections of typical requirements. That's the title page, and here's the table of contents. Let's go. First of all, we may see the project scope. Okay. This is a small project, so the scope takes only one line here, but it states the idea of the project: to eliminate encoding multiplicity in text documents. Okay, now we know what we are working with, what we are developing, and so on. The project scope is extremely useful for big projects because there are maybe a lot of points here, and each and every member of a project may now hold these ideas in his mind while making any decision in his everyday work. Main goals of the project. Now, what are we going to achieve? Eliminate the necessity of manual encoding detection, decrease document processing time, and so on. The bigger project we are working with, the more points may be here. The criteria for main goal achievement. How can we know that we achieved those main goals set by the customer or agreed with him? Okay, full automation of encoding detection. Processing time decreased by some value, and so on. This is rather objective criteria, not just we make something good, something valuable, something nice. It's just 2 points, but rather objective ones. Some risks may be mentioned here. Here we see technological risk, high complexity of accurate detection of text document initial encoding. And that's not an imaginary risk, that's a real-life risk, and many projects dealing with texts and with text encoding have to somehow deal with the risk. The next section is system characteristics. This is about our application. Here we see it should be a console one, should be developed with PHP of some version, and so on. And we see cross-references here, links. For instance, let's click that L1, and what do we see? Why the application should be developed with PHP. Let's go back. Here we see that something PHP related is described here. Okay, let's go and see. A lot of text here. It's not mandatory to read it now because you should have the following document attached to this video, so you may read these requirements. What's next after system characteristics? User requirements. This section describes what a user may do with the application and how the application should react. We even see the UML diagram here. It shows that only one role is here, only one actor. It describes actions, it has some comments here, and so on. And for most user requirements, we may see links to detailed specifications, DS, or limitations, L. There may be business rules. This section describes some information that comes from some industrial standards or some traditions in some business or some subject matter, and so on. And here we have 2 business rules. Where did they come from? We do not know. Maybe for some reason it's a tradition in that organization we are developing this software for. Maybe there is another reason, but these two rules look okay. There is nothing unexpected in them, there is no contradictions in them, there is nothing frightening about them. So for now we may leave it intact and think maybe it's okay, just let us follow those rules and everything will be fine. Quality attributes. Quality attributes show us another good clue on what we should pay attention to. How the customer will know that the application is good enough, it has good quality. Here we see performance and some clarification and resilience to input data. Of course, that's important for any data processing application. And we see here several links to detailed specification. How this application should react to specific file formats, file sizes, and how it should react to incorrect input file formats. Limitations show us the limitations, that's obvious. Here we see several, maybe not interconnected with each other, but rather important things and ideas. The application should be developed with PHP for some specific reason, some details on PHP configuration, version, and so on. And we may find more data in detailed specification 1. We see that PHP setup configuration is out of scope of this project, and we will not be described any documentation and so on and so forth. So anything that may limit us or limit project scope or introduce any other limitation, we should mention it here. And the final section, one with the greatest amount of text, detailed specifications. Not every project has detailed specifications, but this section, if presented, is extremely useful for all project team, especially for developers, for programmers, because here are details. Exact names should be used, exact parameters should be passed, exact messages should be displayed, and so on, and so on, and so on. Having this section, developers find it much easier to develop the application. So, of course, in real-life projects, if we are talking about huge projects, these sections may look somehow different. There may be more sections, there may be some subsections, or some sections may be absent or may be combined. That's okay. Here we see only main typical approach. We may use some other requirements management tools like well-known Jira. Here we have the same file converter project, and for instance, what do we see here? We see some epic about start-stop of the application with some sub-tasks and so on. We may see some requirements, and here is how it looks in Jira. The same idea as you've already seen in Confluence a couple of minutes ago, but just in another form of representation. And we may even use such an old-school, old-style approach as Microsoft Word documents or PDF documents. That's the same documentation you've already seen. The same table of contents, the same text here. I'll scroll it down with pauses. So if for some reason you do not have this document, you may pause the video and read the text here. As you can see, even for such imaginary and little project, we have 6 full pages of text here. So, of course, there may be much bigger projects requirements in real life. And finally, once again, the main idea. It doesn't really matter which tool we use. Of course, it's more convenient to work with a convenient tool. It's more efficient and effective, but the main idea is the same. You should have requirements, good requirements. And hopefully you have some tool that will help you to maintain those requirements in a good shape and condition, so you develop and test the project easily.